Hello and welcome to week 16 of the Country Garden Crochet Along, and this week we're making the arrow stitch. This is a cable type stitch and it's one of the more difficult stitches of this project, but as long as you keep track of your stitch count, all will be well. So how do we make it?
Okay, so I'm going to be using our dark green this week, and I'm going to start by joining it into the corner stitch. So I'm working above the puff flower stitch, okay, so on that alongside, and I'm going to join into this second corner stitch on the edge, and I'm going to join and chain one, and in the same stitch I'm going to make a single crochet. And I'll just mark that with a stitch marker. Okay, so in the next two stitches we're going to single crochet as well. 1 and 2. So including our starter stitch, we've got 3 single crochet there. And now I'm going to chain 1, skip the next stitch and single crochet in the next 3. So we've got a nice simple pattern for the first row. Okay, so make our 3 single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then we're going to make a single crochet in the next 3 stitches. And that's our pattern for this whole side. So we're going to be working in rows this week, and we're just working on this one side. Okay, so row 1 is just 3 single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then a single crochet in the next 3 stitches. I'm going to do that all the way down the row. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this row, and I'll come back to you when I get to the end. Okay, so I've got to the end of the row and I've made my last 3 single crochet as we get to the corner stitch. But you're not going to be finishing in the first corner stitch, you're going to be finishing in the second. And that's just so we can bring the stitch count right for this stitch. Okay, so I'm in that second corner stitch there, and that's where we finish for this row. Okay. So row 2, I'm just going to turn, excuse me for a second, it's getting rather big now. Okay, so we turn and we chain 1. And we're going to make a double crochet turning chain in the first stitch. There we go. And all we're going to do for this row is double crochet in every stitch. Okay, and that includes into the chain 1. So just make a double crochet, and then when you get to the chain 1 space, just go into that space and make a double crochet. So you should have 87 stitches for these 2 rows. Okay, and that stitch count should remain the same for this whole panel. Okay, and that's all we're going to do. Just double crochet in every single stitch, including the chain 1 space. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that, and I shall see you when I get to the end of the row. Okay, so I've got to the end of that row, I've got all my double crochet in. Okay, and now I'm going to turn. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, so row 3, and this is where we start making our arrows. So chain 1, and in the first stitch make a single crochet. Okay, so our first arrow, wrap the yarn around your hook twice, okay, as if you're going to make a treble crochet. And what we're aiming for is this skip stitch in row 1, but we're not going into the space, we're going into the loops of the skip stitch. So into the loops of the yellow, as if you're making a normal stitch in there. Okay, yarn over, pull through your hook, and then just finish as if it's a treble crochet. So it is a treble crochet, you just work it into those 2 loops. You see I've gone through the normal 2 loops there, and it'll just sit across. After you finish this first part of your arrow stitch, and this is the end stitches, the only time we do it this way. Okay, so we've finished that. In the next stitch, which isn't the next free one behind here because that's where our arrow stitch goes, so the next one across we'll make a single crochet, then chain 1, skip the next stitch and make a single crochet in the next stitch. So that chain 1 space should line up with the chain 1 space in row 1. Okay, so they're all going to line up in a row. Okay, so in the next stitch we're going to make another arrow stitch, but we're going to make both parts together. So now we're going to make the next 2 parts of the arrow stitch together. So yarn over twice, same as we did before. Okay, now we're going to go back to the same stitch as we made that last leg of the arrow stitch, and we're going to make a stitch the same way. So pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, leave the last 2 loops on your hook. Now yarn over twice again. We're going to skip all the stitches here and go straight to the next chain 1 space across. Okay, and then you're going to yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. You should have 3 loops left on your hook, then yarn over, pull through all 3. And there is your arrow stitch, and I've just made a very big hole there. Okay, I'm going to go back and redo that in a minute. It's quite difficult to keep that tight while showing you how it's done as well. Okay, so pretend that's not there. I'll fix that in a bit. Okay, so now make sure I go in the right place. I'm gonna, so that's where our arrow stitch is in front of, and in the next stitch I'm going to make a single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch and make a single crochet in the next. Okay, so as before, that chain 1 space should line up with the chain 1 space here, and the aim is to get this kind of zigzag pattern going all the way across. Okay, so now we're going to make the next arrow stitch. Yarn over twice into the same stitch that we just finished the last arrow stitch, so that's the skip stitch in row 1. Okay, and you pull through your first 2 loops and the second 2 loops, leave the last 2 loops on your hook, yarn over twice again, move on to the next chain 1 space across in round 1, and we finish the stitch in there. So pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 3. It's not much better. I'm going to go back and fix this once I finish the video. Okay, and that's are your arrow stitches. So once again, when we finish this arrow stitch, so that's where we made our last chain 1, in that stitch there. In this stitch here is where our arrow stitch is in front of. So although we've not gone into the loops, we've used it, so ignore that one. And then in this stitch here, we make a single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and chain and single crochet in the next stitch. Okay, so a good way to check that you are making your stitches in the right place is that skip stitch with a chain 1 lines up with where you're making your arrow stitch in row 1. And you're going to repeat that all the way across. Okay, so I've got 2 stitches left. So there's my last arrow stitch, and then I've done the 3 single crochet. So to finish this row we need to do another half arrow stitch and then do 1 last single crochet. So we did what we do with the first stitch of the row, except kind of the opposite direction. So we're working back into the same stitch that we finished our last arrow stitch, and this time we're going to complete the treble crochet. 2 and then pull through the last 2 loops, and then single crochet in the last stitch. And there we go, that's row 3 complete. Okay, so after we've turned, we're going to chain 1, and then in the first stitch make a double crochet turning chain. I'll just move my stitch marker up. And now we're going to make a double crochet in every stitch across. So this is a repeat of row 2, and you're making that double crochet in every stitch, including that chain 1 space, exactly the same as before. So the rest of the pattern is a repeat of rows 2 and 3, so you'll always have a row of double crochet between your arrow stitch rows. Okay, and there's no difference between the rows at all, just an exact repeat. Okay, so there are 10 rows in total for this panel, and row 10 will be a double crochet row. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this panel, and I shall see you when I get to the end of row 10. Okay, so I completed row 10, and it's a row of double crochet to finish, and you'll end up with these lovely V's, or downward pointing arrows, all the way across the panel. Okay, and you should have 4 sets of arrows, just all sitting nicely on top of each other. So that's it for this week, and you can go ahead and cut off and weave in your ends once you've finished, and I shall see you next week for our next panel. Bye for now.